Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. As most of you know, June is Pride Month, and June 27th is Global Pride Day. So the ATP and the WTA have partnered up to sponsor the You Can Play Pride panel that we're putting on today. And you can be sure to catch Tennis United every Friday on the ATP and WTA Tours digital platforms. And we just want to say thank you again to them for sponsoring this conversation and for supporting the community in You Can Play. My name is Marty Nee, and I'm the co-founder and creative director at Gumption. We're a content company based out of Washington, D.C. I have the privilege and honor of overseeing a number of initiatives with You Can Play. When I first came out, You Can Play was a huge beacon of hope for me, especially in my professional work, in my work in the sports world. They helped me a lot to feel good about myself and to feel safe and to feel comfortable being myself. And for that, I'm super thankful. And I'm excited for you to meet all our panelists today. James will be joining us for the second half of the panel, but I want to get you introduced to everyone else that's here. So let's start with you, Cavender. Tell us a little bit about your background in sport and your relationship to the community, and maybe give us a little bit of insight of what you've been doing to stay active and reduce stress during the pandemic.
Yeah, so I'm a former Division I cross country runner and track runner, and now I coach cross country as well. But my day job is working as a program manager for You Can Play. And so I'd say my relationship with the community is both, I'm a gay man, but at the same time, I also feel like an ally to the community, just because I'm working constantly to make the space more inclusive, and I'm working as an ally to listen to different stories. So in short, gay man, but also an ally. And then I think to stay sane during this, I think originally I was running a whole bunch, but after a couple months of doing that, now I'm just trying to find, like, I'd say stories and moments of positivity through everything. Obviously there's a ton going on and I'm very respectful of that, but I try and find at least one thing a day where it kind of gives me hope for the world.
That's awesome. I dig that. And Dylan and Sharon, how about you?
Yeah, so you know, we've been using this time, I'd say, maximizing it. We seem to be always busy, so it's been quite an incredible time. You know, I've personally, I've been in tennis my whole life. I'm a professional athlete on the WTA tour, and there have been numerous other athletes that have come out while I've been on tour, and I've always felt that supporting the LGBTQ community is absolutely the right thing. There's a ton of my colleagues on tour that fit in that space, and I just feel that it's so important to use your voice and to speak up, and to really raise awareness for what you feel is right. You know, and during this time, we've really maximized it by educating ourselves a ton, reading as much as possible. I mean, they're in the forefront right now. You know, it is Pride Month, but the Black Lives Matter movement has been in the forefront of media, and we've been educating ourselves and listening and watching and learning, and we really have awoken and transformed a lot as people, and we're just going to be continuing to do so. On a slightly lighter note, we have become plant parents. We absolutely love plants. I started with one plant very recently, and now we're at 26. That's been our time.
Obsessive athletes, no one's ever heard of that before, right? Yeah, so I to echo some of what Sharon said, this time has been very transformative for us. Myself, I spent my entire life in figure skating. I started when I was 3 and I retired when I was 33. So I spent a very, very, very long time in the sport, representing Canada for 18 years, competed at the Sochi Olympics, won a silver medal there in the team event. I was a pair skater myself. But the LGBTQ community has been huge in my life, being in figure skating, but also I have a gay uncle. My mom is from South Africa and he lives in South Africa, and he's been very close to me throughout my life. And my best friend, who is kind of a beacon in the community, Eric Radford, world Olympic champion, and one of the, I think the first publicly out figure skater while competing. Him and I have been best friends since we were 17. He came out to me and when he lived with my family, and I've been through the whole process with him. And I find that I derive a lot of joy and pride from supporting the community and supporting those and amplifying their voices and being able to share with other people my story and my views on the Pride movement, on You Can Play, and how the power of sport can bring people together, and how in situations like this, it's doing a lot of good. And I love doing this. I love speaking on behalf of the organization, and I'm honored to be here.
Awesome, guys. And Jeremy, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, yeah. I'm Jeremy Sonkin. I'm originally from Wheaton, Illinois. I currently reside in Chicago, Illinois, where I'm a high-performance tennis professional. I work with regional, national, international, and professional level players. I went to school at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, played tennis there. I took a long hiatus and actually fell into acting for quite a long time. I was on the Broadway national tour for Jesus Christ Superstar. But tennis had always been kind of in my radar, and I'd always kept it a part of me since it's been a huge part of my life since I can remember. I started playing when I was 7 years old. And at the young age of 31, I decided that I would go back out on tour. It was one of my biggest regrets, never giving myself that chance and that opportunity. So I went out and started training in 2017. I started competing again in February of 2018, and I played through mid-November that year and had a pretty solid year. I got up to 818 ATP, which I was very proud of. And I wanted to continue that next year. The transition tour hit, which with thousands of other players really kind of took the carpet right out from under our feet. And I was kind of at a fork in the road. Do I continue into the unknown, or do I take everything that I've learned throughout my entire process as a player and start giving it and sharing it with players that I can bring the knowledge to? And that's been my path so far. I'm still itching to get back out, so you never know. We'll see what happens. I've been lucky during this quarantine. Luckily, tennis has never really shut down in Chicago, but I spent quite a bit of time in LA where I was working with a few players there. Recently came back to Chicago and I'm back with my players here as well. In the meantime as well, I'm also a fitness trainer for a company called Bellicon, which has been a savior for me as well, especially fitness-wise. It's workouts on mini trampoline, which is so much fun. And then I've also have a lifetime subscription to Rosetta Stone. So I am practicing my Spanish.
That's awesome. I actually just started up Babbel myself. I've been trying to learn Spanish for 5 years, so it's game time.
We can practice sometime.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, so Cav, I was hoping that you could maybe tell us a little bit about what is You Can Play up to these days, and just maybe a little bit more about the organization for the folks that haven't learned about the great work that you do.
Yeah, I'll try not to get too into it, but You Can Play is a LGBTQ+ nonprofit looking to create more inclusive sports spaces. So normally in a pre-COVID world, we would do that through creating like Pride nights, Pride campaigns, policy consulting, doing things like workshops with coaches and staff. But when Corona hit, we kind of realized that a lot of our stuff was really dependent on being in-person events. And so we kind of had to take a step back and think, okay, how can we accomplish our mission of creating more inclusive sports spaces when we don't necessarily have sports going on? And so what we really came to was doing things like this virtual panel, or we had a series of You Can Play lives, which are essentially just Instagram lives that we've been hosting since the start of June. We had about 2-3 a week since the start of June, just trying to highlight LGBTQ+ athletes and allies, with the hope that hopefully someone would feel less alone if they could hear that conversation. Because I think a lot of LGBTQ+ students and people in general, a lot of their community was taken away from them now that they're kind of trapped at home. So our hope is hopefully to kind of alleviate some of that. Moving forward, I think we're going to keep a lot of this virtual stuff, honestly. I think it creates a conversation and allows people to come together in ways that maybe we couldn't do before. So that's kind of what we've been up to. And in general, yeah, we just look to create more inclusive sports spaces.
Yeah, I think that's so important, you know, and we do a lot of work together. We talk a lot too about physical spaces and mental spaces, you know, and just trying to open both up for everybody and support each other. And actually, Dylan, I was thinking maybe we could talk to you a little bit about that, supporting folks. And I was hoping maybe you could tell us a little bit more about your personal experiences as an ally. Maybe if you have a specific story or an anecdote you could share with us.
I'm number one, I'm a big believer in including anybody and everybody who wants to be included. I've never fully understood the whole exclusion concept, especially when it comes to segregating people based on their sexual orientation, their race, et cetera, et cetera. To me, it never really made sense. And I guess as I got older and saw more of it, growing up in figure skating, regardless of being a straight man, I was bullied for being in figure skating. And, you know, it definitely heightened my awareness and compassion for those who do struggle with that kind of fear of what that bullying would feel like, or that fear of presenting themselves, you know, to the world as they are, as they're going through a transition. And I think being an athlete and having a presence obviously heightens that pressure, heightens that fear. And like I said before, you know, going through it with my best friend, Eric, was so eye-opening. I think we learned together as he went through it, and we were arch rivals throughout our careers and stayed best friends. To this day, I was his best man at his wedding. And to me, I just believe in speaking up for those who are oppressed. I believe in speaking up for what is right. I believe in educating people. I don't believe that everybody is evil. You know, I think we all have good in us, and I think we all have an inclusive nature in us. We're all capable of love, and I think just using my voice to illuminate for people how important their voice is, and their views and their actions towards others, and how it affects them. And I think, you know, breaking that stigma by breaking the ice and having the conversations and being a confident straight man to talk about these things, and being able to, you know, be an ally and be someone who stands side by side. And I look forward to Pride every year. They're some of the best parties I've ever gone to. And the parade is such an incredible celebration of life and freedom. And, you know, I always feel honored to be part of it. And I always feel honored to be able to speak up for those who maybe can't, and for those who have been put in situations that were uncomfortable and unfair because of their sexual orientation or their differences.
And Sharon, how about you? Could you maybe share a little bit about your personal journey in the world of inclusion?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually interesting for me. So you know, tennis being a individual sport, that was actually not something that I became more aware of, and I prioritized until I was older, and actually probably a lot more recently until I met Dylan. Like for me, like I said, being on the WTA tour, there are a number of other women on tour that compete professionally that are part of the LGBTQ community. And for me, that's just been that's been what I grew up with. And they're everyone on tour for the most part are wonderful people, regardless of their differences, of their sexual orientation. So for me, that's just been pretty matter of fact. Like, that's great. The inclusiveness of just bringing people together and really making a point to reach out to the LGBTQ community has been actually a lot more recent since Dylan and I have been together. Like, we marched in the Pride Parade together last year, and just being a lot more part of the figure skating community, where that is so much more prominent, has been so incredible. And what's really brought so much joy to me is I've met such wonderful people that are part of the LGBTQ community that I would have otherwise not met had I not met Dylan. And I will honestly say that since being more involved in the community, my life has been so much better. And it's just incredible how inclusive and wonderful so many people are that I would have never met, I would have otherwise never met. And it just makes me even more an ally and supportive of the LGBTQ community because of how incredible so many people have improved my life and these wonderful people. And I just want to be another voice to help, like Dylan said, amplify everyone's words and just be there and be super supportive as much as I can.
That's really great, you know, and I think we talk a lot about allyship at You Can Play. You know, it's such an important part of our movement and our journey towards equality for all of us, right? Is just sort of acceptance across the board. And I think, you know, y'all have such a great perspective on this. And I think from our community to yours, like, just thank you for being so swell. You know, and Jeremy, I was hoping you might be able to share a little bit too about kind of your story, some of your challenges, you know, maybe life pre and post coming out and what that's been like for you.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, growing up in Wheaton, Illinois was very, very tough. It is a very conservative, very religious town. I was luckily to be adopted into an incredible family. They are all white. And that was a lot of my surrounding growing up. I can recall on maybe one hand how many classes in grade school through high school that I wasn't the only person of color in class. And then translating that over into tennis as a junior in the United States, it's very much the same. When I was coming through the system, there were only a few of us that I can remember that were excelling really well. Myself, Donald Young, a player by the name of Timothy Neely, my doubles partner at the time, Kurt Williams, and a few others. And if we were watching on TV, I mean, we had James Blake to look up to. Gael Monfils was coming through the system. He was young at the time. So as a person in many different facets, it was very difficult to identify with somebody in my sport. From a very young age, I knew I was gay. I mean, I pretty much can go back to at least 5th grade just knowing. And I wish that I could have had somebody to give me the sense that who I am was okay, because I was living in an environment for so long that was telling me that I wasn't, that it was wrong, that I wasn't included, that I didn't belong. I was even teased about being gay before I had even thought about telling anybody that I was gay. I can go as far back as 12 years old, whether it was in school or tennis tournaments. It was very rare that I was in a position where I didn't have to face some sort of adversity and some sort of hatred, honestly. And it made for a very, very, very tough road, especially through a sport that I love. I often say that, you know, not only is tennis the sport that kind of kept me alive, but it was also kind of at times a sport that almost led to my demise. And I was met with, what do? Do I use all these excuses to have reasons why and to stop doing something that I love so much and that I worked so hard for, even at a young age? Or do I do what everybody's telling me to do, which is just grin and bear it, be the bigger person, and just kind of get over it? And that's what I chose to do for a very, very long time. I chose to do whatever I could to suppress myself. I would present myself falsely. I would say yes, and I would be very respectful, and I would do everything that I could to essentially not draw any additional attention to myself in fear that it would be a major problem. And it wasn't until I went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison that I realized that for 18 years, I was living in a very, very wrong picture of what the world is. Madison is one of the most liberal and colorful towns that in the United States, as far as I'm concerned. So to be there was an absolute blessing, honestly, to realize that, you know what, no, you're valid. Who you are is not wrong. And everybody, this world that you've been living in, it's not reality. It's not real. And so when I started to come out in my early 20s, and luckily it was amongst people that I knew that would be really accepting. You know, not everybody's going to accept you, and that's fine. But especially now later in life, when I went back out on tour, it was very important to do it as authentically me. And seeing how this younger generation is stepping up and really grasping the things that are going on in the world and realizing just how backwards it is. It was the thing that led me to believe that, you know what, like, we're in a period where maybe 10 years ago, the ATP tennis was not ready to embrace that, to have an athlete that's openly gay and to have that be on the forefront of being an elite athlete, because being gay and an elite athlete for so long, they did not go hand in hand. I think we've moved past that. And so really seeing how this younger generation has stepped up in the way that I was treated in the lower level tournaments and lower level challengers, I didn't have any issues. I didn't have any problems. I didn't fear telling anybody who I was, or if they asked if I had a girlfriend, well, no, I'm gay and I'm single. I had no problems. And that was one of the most enlightening things for me after living in a time where I feared for the longest time on the tennis court being Black, being gay. And I don't have necessarily that fear anymore. And so I'm really enlightened by that.
Yeah, I think that's really, really special. I think that acceptance, you know, I don't think everyone feels it. I think coming out for some people isn't a positive experience, but I would say that for the majority of people, I hope that it is incredibly supportive. And I was surprised personally by how supportive people were. I mean, talk about crying on Facebook, you know. it was really beautiful. So I don't know, I can relate to that. I think it's so important that people do come out and find that joy.
Yeah, and sure. I think combining both Dylan, Sharon's, and Jeremy's points, I think there's certain sports where people maybe feel safer to be in if they know they're gay from a young age. And I think talking about how like Jeremy came out to people he knew would be supportive, I think it's about creating those spaces and in sport where people know they are accepted. So not only is it like trying to get someone in football to come out, but even like a sport like cross country or a sport like figure skating where where maybe they go to because they think, okay, this will be safer for me, but then also making it so they know it is safer for them to come out and that they can be authentically themselves and perform at such a high level.
Yeah, I'd love to touch on that because in figure skating, the interesting thing is that it's an artistic sport and it's a medium for people to express themselves. And despite that, it took so long for figure skaters to come out publicly while they were competing. And that's because it's a judged sport and there's so much fear instilled in us from a young age about our image and what the judges will think of us and how much power we give them and how little power we have as athletes. So even in an seemingly obvious situation, it isn't. And I think, you know, across the board, across all sports, making that inclusivity and that welcoming feeling for anybody to feel comfortable coming out is important. And I think it has to be addressed in every single sport, regardless of how difficult it might seem at face value.
Absolutely. You know, we had a takeover the other day and there was another athlete talking, you know, encouraging coaches to talk about that. You know, coaches set the tone for the team. We all know that. And they all have rules and they all have bullet points and they all have things that are absolute no-nos. And she brought up the point that just saying that we are an inclusive team, just saying that we don't discriminate against anybody can go a long way, you know? So I think your point's well taken.
And just to touch on that really quickly, yeah, that's a huge point. Part of it is, as Dylan and Sharon and you have been saying, education is huge. I can't remember personally whether it was a team event, even in college, or let alone all the national tournaments, whatever, where there was kind of that moment where the people in charge, the tournament directors, have that moment to connect with the players and say, look, there's zero tolerance. You know, or this is an inclusive space. Anybody who's earned the right to be here this is a safe space and it's not going to be tolerated. And that's something that I would love to see now. I mean, in 2020, that's a precedent in tennis specifically that I start to see in tournaments where, you know, in the time that it takes to sign in for your tournament and get your credential and all of that, there is time for a 30-minute seminar to say, look, we're an inclusive space. Everybody's welcome. There's a zero tolerance policy. That's something that I'd really like to see personally in my sport a little more.
Yeah, I take your point. You know, we've made some big strides, but there's still a lot of work to do and a lot that we can do. You know, small things can make a big difference, to your point. You know, and just I want to pivot a little bit and talk about sport. You know, separately, Sharon, I was hoping you might share some of your thoughts, and I'd love to hear from all of you on this. But how has your identity been impacted by sport and by tennis?
My identity been impacted by sport and tennis. I mean, in a way, like my identity is sort of my sport. I very much worked a lot personally to remember and remind myself that tennis is not who I am, it's what I do. And I think that's really important for everyone, because in a sport, especially like tennis, you know, the wins and the losses, I mean, there's a new tournament every week, and you pretty much lose every week. If you have a great season, you lose maybe, I don't know, 20 weeks out of your 25-week calendar. And that's just the way it is. And if you are tying your self-worth and your self-esteem to the results, then it's a very roller coastery mental state that you're going to be in. And I struggled with that. So for myself, it's really important that I just really focus on the fact that I am Sharon, I am myself, I am not tennis. Tennis doesn't define me. It's something I do. It's something I love to do. And as much as it's shaped who I am, and it's taught me so many incredible lessons, and it's brought me around the world, it's brought me opportunities that I would never have if I didn't play this amazing sport. It's important to remember that there is a person behind the racket, and you know, you can sometimes lose sight of that because, you know, people can be very, very vocal on social media about your performance, about how you do, and you can start to take that personally. But it is a lot easier to type some mean comments behind a screen, and you just have to remind yourself that's someone else's problem. And also the thing is, you know, I am an older athlete, and as much as I do identify as a professional athlete, like there was a couple of years in my career where I actually quit. I put the racket down between 2016 and the end of 2018, so 2.5 years. And only started playing again because Dylan inspired me to come back through his journey. And I returned to tennis almost 3 years out, and was kind of 0 in the world, and am now about 48 in the world. And I had that 2.5 year gap to really discover who I was and learn a lot more about myself and get to know Sharon without a tennis racket. So I just feel that it is such a huge part of who I am, and I wouldn't be who I am or where I am today without the sport. But I do keep in the forefront of my mind that tennis is something that I do, and it doesn't define me, and it's something beautiful, and it's something I enjoy, but there is a person there for sure.
I will say that you did really come back. I encourage you to come back because I wanted to be around tennis more.
Yeah.
And so she just loves me a lot.
Yeah, he was just sick of being like in a freezing cold ice box.
Yeah, let's be in the sun. It's a lot better.
Yeah. His tan's way better.
Yeah, exactly. To address that question and what role sport plays in our lives, I decided when I was 5, my mom told me when I was 5, she asked me if I wanted to go to the Olympics. And I said, no, I want to win the Olympics. And that was, you know, I went to my Olympics at 29. So 24 years of unhealthy obsessiveness, essentially. And the longer your goal kind of, the further away it is, the longer you are chasing it, the more it consumes you. And at the other end of my Olympic journey was just like, you know, the earth was flat and it stopped. It just dropped off. And it's been fascinating for me over the last 2.5 years, transitioning out of the sport to really get to know Dylan on a deeper level. And I'm acting full time, and it's kind of in my group therapy. And I'm screenwriting, and I'm doing TV broadcasting, but like all these outlets of art and expression, and ways that I'm diving into the layers of Dylan that you suppress, because as an athlete, vulnerability is weakness, and you have this insane ability to compartmentalize because it's your survival. And in art, you can't subdue all the parts of who you are because they're your colors on your palette. And it's been fascinating to like uncover and dig out all these aspects of me that I've tucked away. So like Sharon said, who I am now, I'm a retired Olympic athlete, and I'm very proud of everything I've done. And I'm immensely grateful for the skill sets and the people that skating has brought into my life. But now I'm coloring with those colors in a very different way. And I'm using them to kind of create good in different aspects of my life. And I feel reborn. And it's been a pretty interesting process.
Yeah, just relating it to being in the LGBTQ plus community, I think I'll start over once. Hey, James.
Hey, sorry for being a couple minutes late here. We're just moving into our house this week, so it's been a hectic things coming up left and right.
All good. Yeah, so we're recording it. So obviously we're just gonna edit out this portion, but yeah. Okay. I'm gonna start with my response to that. Is that okay? Okay.
James, maybe put your thing on mute just so your screen doesn't pop up.
Yeah, perfect. So.
Perfect. Yeah, just relating it back to the LGBTQ plus community, I think part of what a lot of LGBTQ plus athletes really struggle with is, like you both said, like I think for so long people really make like their sport their identity, and it's like really hard to move past that and like kind of dig deeper into who you are. And so I think it's twofold related to the community, where people, you can't hide who like your true, like, I mean, being gay is so core to my identity. And so it's like directly fighting against being an athlete. And so there's a lot of like internal stress and anxiety related to that. I don't know if you can relate to that, Jeremy. But I know like at a certain point, it's just like, I couldn't hide it anymore. And like, I had to come out because it was affecting my running, and I couldn't run to the level that I needed to anymore.
No, I couldn't agree more. There was a distinct moment in my career, about 16, 17 years old, where I'd hit a roadblock, and it was 100% dealing with identity, dealing with feeling like I wasn't fitting in, and just how to navigate that. And that followed me into college. And once, kind of like you, that I started to embrace who I was and come to terms with who I was, that's when it started to kind of open up for me again. But there was that long period of internal conflict and struggle that took me a long time to get over and to figure out and to navigate. And thankfully, surrounding myself with the right people allowed me to get over that wall, get over that hump, and get back on track. But it's very, very hard when you're fighting with that duality and just trying to figure things out and come to terms with yourself and find self-happiness. Very, very difficult.
So James, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm James Van Riemsdyk. I'm a hockey player for the Philadelphia Flyers and an ally to the LGBTQ community.
Excellent. And maybe, I don't know if you have a memory from Pride that you could talk to us about, or a specific memory, you know, from your work in the community that you might want to share.
Yeah, you know what, a specific instance, I guess it started early on when in the NHL we started with these Pride nights, and with the rainbow tape on our sticks, and just specifically, I just remember having a bunch of different people just reach out to me via social media, just saying how much it meant for us to do that. And again, obviously it's a small sort of gesture in the sense of us like just showing that we're there for support, and we're there to kind of, again, be in their corner and stuff like that. And yeah, so it's again, it was nice to see a small gesture like that go a long way. And obviously there's so much more we can do and be outspoken about these things. And again, as we're learning, I think through some more recent events that are going on in the world, I think it just, again, obviously we want to treat everyone by the golden rule, and treat everyone how you want to be treated. But also, I think, again, it goes a step further, and also speaking up when you're in a position and have a platform to again bring some more awareness and more light to certain things and certain inequalities that are going on in the world today.
Definitely. And, you know, huge shout out to Pride Tape. For those of you that don't know what it is, Google it. But I think it's a really good example of some of the small things you can do, you know, and putting Pride Tape on your stick or on your helmet or whatever, just to show that you're in the community, you support the community, but that it's just okay for everyone to be themselves. So yeah, you're definitely heard there. I was thinking, Dylan, just sort of pivoting a little bit on what James said, could you talk a little bit about whether or not you think that athletes should use their platform for social issues?
So this is a tricky one. I believe they should. And a lot of my career, I was hesitant. Like I said, figure skating is a judge sport. We are all hyper aware of, you know, making sure you're staying safe with regards to your image and your reputation. And it does instill a kind of fear of speaking up. There have been skaters that have spoken up, and they've been met with a lot of hostility, I guess you could say, or not warm, not a warm reception, so to speak. But I think that in today's world and the way that athletes are seen as beacons of hope and examples of, you know, the human spirit, because that's I think the reason we watch sport is we see people step up in big moments and display the utmost potential of the human spirit of will. And those are some of the values of what sport gives to the world. And I think being someone who has that platform, who has that power, there is so much good you can do with it. And there are ways to do it in a tactful way. And there are ways to do it in a way that hits home without, you know, attacking people. But I think that athletes have a power, and with that power comes responsibility to, you know, do their part to make the world a better place for others, because others are looking up to them to do that.
I think it's a huge point, absolutely. And you know, I'd love to expand a little bit, and any of you feel free to answer this. But just talking about in that light, like how do you talk to fans or people in general that might have, we'll say, different views, you know, than you do? What are some of the things you all do?
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback off of what Dylan was saying, you know, with my experience, I would say that I was a bit more subdued as well on my social media platform prior to 2020. And mainly because I view myself very much as an anti-discriminative, if that's a word, person. I see everyone's color and I see beauty. I see the beautiful color of everyone's skin, and I see the wonderful things about about everyone's differences. I think that that's what makes the world so beautiful. I mean, growing up in Toronto, it is the most multicultural city in the world, and that's what I love about it. And to me, that was just normal. So I never really spoke up and used my voice to say anything about it, because for me, that was just how I was raised. And you know, the most recent events that are happening in social media and around media right now have just awoken me to see that no, it is not okay to just not say something. If you truly believe in something, you must use your voice, because what is a voice if it's not raised? And I just feel so strongly that you have a platform, no matter how big or how small. And if you feel strongly about something, if there is injustice in the world, if you believe that people are being wronged, you must say something. That is the only way that things will change for the better. It's not going to change if you do nothing. And I really believe that even the people that feel that they can't make very much of an impact, it's just so untrue, because you never know the people that you may impact and the people that you may change, and then the domino effect from that. And I just really feel that you know, collectively we have so much more power than we think we do. I mean, Dylan and I have been we've been at the protests in Toronto that have been happening, wearing our masks, and everyone has been doing so, which has been phenomenal. And we can see that it just brings other people together. We've shared it to our community, and then we have other friends of ours that are now, you know, vocally becoming allies, and then that's become a domino effect, and we're so proud of that. And to see that, you know, our platforms are doing something it just kind of inspires you to keep going with it. So, you know, I was a long-winded answer to say, absolutely, you have a platform, use it. You have a voice, raise it. That's what it's for.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Much like Sharon and Dylan as well, I've been learning to use my voice as well to the absolute best that I can. For a long time, I was put into a position of feeling scared to be vocal, to be present, and to speak out about issues that are important to me and important to so many people in my life and in my community. And if anything, these last couple of years has shown me is that, especially now when we're in a time where I'm very much, there are two sides of the spectrum, it seems like right now, with very little gray area in between. You know, there are the people that are for the cause, and then there are the people that are working against the cause. But allowing myself, even on the limited platform that I do, to speak up to the people that of course, there are people in my network that may disagree. And as Dylan was saying earlier, yes, there is a tactful way to do it. There is a way to have a dialogue with people that are on two separate sides of the spectrum to try to create some kind of cohesiveness and understanding amongst each other. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to agree and we're going to change people's mind, but there's a way to at least have the discussion and the decision. It's not always going to be successful, but that's why, you know, things like this and having panels like this are so important, to raise the important questions, to create a dialogue and a discussion, to engage people on all different sides of the spectrum and see if there's a way to somehow find some cohesion and to meet. And for me personally, being able to share my story and where I came from and how I feel about the political climate of everything that's going on in the world right now, it's been one of the most liberating and freeing experiences for me. And that is worth its weight in gold, honestly.
Yeah, I hear you there. And I was wondering, I was hoping maybe you could expand a little bit. You know, we wanted to talk a little bit about the intersectionality between, you know, in inclusion between race and sexuality and just how we're all sort of treated. I was wondering if you maybe want to expand a little bit on what you were saying in that light.
Yeah. So I was in a position of, there's a lot of facets to me. So again, person of color, Black, grew up in an all-white family, Jewish upbringing. So I have a lot of different little pieces. And, you know, for me, it took a long time to find a cohesion. Again, I'm using that word a lot, but it took a long time to culminate all of these things together. And for the longest time, it was hyper-masculating myself to not present in kind of a way. It was presenting what Hollywood or the media thinks is being Black and being urban, or for my upbringing growing up, it was presenting what was a more white front and kind of what that is. It was very difficult to present a cohesion and an authenticity of myself. And being able to do that now, again, it's allowed myself to grow into me and to share me with the people that I love so much, and to at least show people, whether I'm coaching, whether I'm on a panel discussion like this, whatever, that you're not hindered. You don't have to be hindered by what society says in terms of your race, your gender, anything. There's no hindrance there. You can be Black, you can be gay, you can be anything, any color of the rainbow, and that is perfectly fine. That is perfectly just, and there's nothing else to be said about that. And so finding a way to find all of that and get there, yes, it's a process, but I've made it, I found it. It's become my goal and my mission to help other people along the way find it and not have to feel like they have to present a false front from who they aren't. That's really, really important to me, especially today in 2020, but we're gonna get there. We're totally gonna get there.
We're certainly trying. That's for sure. James, could you talk a little bit, you know, we want to talk a little bit more about allyship and what that looks like. And specifically, you know, we're wondering like what you would say to someone who's maybe, you know, who's on a team, say on your team, who's not out, that wants to come out but is afraid to do so. Like, what would you say to that person?
Well, again, first and foremost, I think the more we bring awareness to these sorts of things, the more comfortable that person will feel in their own skin within that obviously the different environments, and that's first and foremost. But I think again that again, most people, again, especially in team sports, like you just, as far as your teammates, like all you care about is how reliable they are doing their job on the ice. In our case, as hockey players, and then if they're a good person and a good teammate, and then from there, obviously, it's every person has their own kind of uniqueness. And again, in hockey, we have players from all sorts of different countries and that sort of thing, and different from all sorts of different walks of life and stuff like that. So again, I think someone mentioned it before, but that's kind of what makes it such a cool sort of environment, is you have all these different people who have different perspectives and from different places, and again, have all their little differences and subtleties and things like that. And again, having that all coming together and working towards a common goal in a sport, I think is something that's awesome. And it's always really cool to be a part of, because again, I just think about my own case, obviously growing up in New Jersey. I never really thought I'd be in a position now where I'm on a team where you have guys from all over the world, and we're all trying to pull the rope in the same direction to accomplish something. And obviously getting back around to what we were talking about is, again, you want to support your teammates and have their back and things like that. So again, whatever they may be going through, you want them to feel comfortable enough to just be themselves and be out in the open and live their life the way they want to live it, and just try to be there to support them.
Definitely. Absolutely. And, I'd love to, hear from more of you on this, like to all the people or young people or any people out there that are watching this that aren't out yet. What do you say to them?
Sorry, go ahead, James.
No, go ahead. Sorry, I wasn't sure if that was directed to me. Go ahead.
No, I think you brought up a really good point, James, where like, as a teammate, I think you really learn how to be an ally. I think if you're a good teammate, you should be a good ally. I think there's a ton of overlap there. And I think if someone's closeted, I think, hey, like, your team, your teammates, like, I'm sure you have someone there that you can trust. And if you're in a solo sport, I'm sure there's a coach, maybe it's your coach, maybe it's one of your opponent's coaches that you can come out to. I think it's just a matter of finding someone that you can express yourself to and be out to. And I think that goes so far to feeling comfortable with it. I think people build it up so much in their head. And I think obviously everyone's situation is different. And, but I do think getting it out there in some way is so helpful, whether that's online, anonymous forum, or whatever. I think just kind of being able to express yourself is so important.
Yeah, I could jump on that. I think also being an ally is essentially the same as being a good friend, being a good teammate, being a good fellow human being. I mean, what kind of energy are you putting out there? Are you making someone feel comfortable that they can be themselves? Do they feel comfortable enough to talk to you about who they really are and some things that maybe they're scared about? And I think understanding the energy you bring to a situation really helps you to understand how to be a good ally, and using the people around you as a litmus test as to how well you're doing with that. Do they feel comfortable talking to you about things? Do they feel comfortable being themselves around you? And, I use that as a guide for myself. And I've had, some great experiences. I went to, with Eric and his husband, Luis, I went to Pride in Madrid with them. And I spent a week in Madrid going around and experiencing what Pride looks like in another country. And it was fantastic and phenomenal. And the biggest thing I got from it is that if I'm comfortable, everyone else is comfortable. If I have no issues, no one else has any issues. And I think that's probably one of the best ways to assess how you can be the best ally for those around you.
Yeah, this might sound like a really silly answer, but the hardest person for me to come out to, honestly, was myself. There was so much back and forth, and I'm gay. No, I'm not. You can't be. And once I was able to come to terms and look at myself in the mirror and say it and embrace it and love myself for it, that's when it started to become easier. And it was a process. It took a lot of time to come to terms with that and to be okay with that, much less, then picking who it is that you're going to tell and who you're going to trust with this information that is really sacred and really, really precious. And I'd also like to say that I want to say that there's no wrong way to do it. It comes down to the person, and it comes down to where your comfort level lies, and how you choose to come out is on your terms. It's when you're ready, how you're ready, and that's the most important thing, doing things on your terms, when you're ready, when you feel like it's the right time.
Definitely. James, did you have something you wanted to add to that at the beginning?
Yeah, you know what, I think again, like, that's obviously a huge weight on someone's shoulders, just not feeling like they can be themselves fully. So just for the sake, again, of talking about just being a teammate and something like that, I'm sure when they're comfortable with being out and being kind of just themselves, I think that will also, like, again, help them as far as being a teammate. And we talk about this and doing their job, like on the ice in the case of hockey, like, again, that's probably a thing, like, for as far as, again, just being able to have that weight off your shoulder. So when you're just worried about playing hockey, then more so than having to carry that burden around. And I, obviously, like has been mentioned before, that can, I'm sure there's different sort of processes to go through, I'm sure, for that, as far as that coming out and stuff like that. So finding that comfort level to do that looks different, I'm sure, for every person. But I'm sure, like we talked about in the sense of sport, just again, it will help in the sense of not having that extra thing to carry, where you feel like you have to hide from people a little bit, in that sense.
Yeah, I hear you there. You know, I was hoping maybe as we wrap up this conversation, you know, we're getting towards the end here. I want to just kind of pose one more thing, and I'd love for you all to comment, and maybe starting with Cav, I'd love to talk a little bit about what people can do outside of Pride. You know, for You Can Play, we say sometimes Pride never ends. It's a year-round thing. So we're, you know, definitely curious what other folks can do, and your other perspectives about what people can do outside of Pride to support the community. And also, I just want to open up the floor to any last thoughts or feelings, you know, about anything we've talked about today in inclusion in sports, or anything you want to say to anyone out there.
Yeah, I think what you can do outside of Pride is such an important question. I think the past couple of years, Pride is almost seen as just like this commercialized thing. So I think what you can do outside of Pride is continue to educate yourself about the LGBTQ+ community, continue to educate yourself about allyship. I think in addition to that, I think doing those little things like using Pride tape on your stick, or having a sticker on your water bottle that's Pride themed, or maybe like on your office door or something like that. I think those little things outside of Pride go so much further, because it's not necessarily the popular thing to do outside of Pride. So I just think stuff like that goes really far. Yeah, that's what I would say in terms of like small actions that you can be doing.
Yeah, I think another way that people can help is educate themselves, you know, understand the history, understand how far Pride has come and You Can Play, and how these organizations have come to be, and why, and who are the people that really, you know, put themselves out there, and sometimes in, you know, really dangerous situations, so that we could be having these conversations today. And understanding that history, I think, helps fill your understanding of what the movement is, and how to keep it moving forward. Because, you know, there is evil in the world. There are people that want to pull things backwards, and hate is hate, and it is the same across the board. And but the same way, love is love, and I think love is the more powerful of the two. And I think if it's directed towards a constructive tomorrow, that understanding that your voice, like we said before, your voice is important, and making small gestures like stickers, and making it, you know, known that you are a supporter, not just a neutral. And I think that is one of the biggest things you can do every single day, is have the conversations with people, be upfront and open about the fact that you are upfront and open and accept everybody, and you support them, and just generally spreading that kind of mentality throughout your community and your network, and helping people to, you know, keep that energy moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, Dylan really said it all, but I truly feel like Cav has said, like Dylan has said, is educating yourself is such a huge way to make an impact, because then you're armed with knowledge and resources to be an ally and to have more information, to be able to share more information, to be able to educate other people. I think it's also really important to remember that everyone's different in the way that they express themselves. You know, Dylan and I, for example, we are very outspoken people. We're definitely extroverted and we're comfortable talking and having conversations and sharing things. But there are people that are more introverted. And it doesn't mean that they have to now change who they are and, you know, grab a loudspeaker and start yelling things. You can find a way that you're comfortable being supportive and being an ally and being outspoken in your own way, whether that's just simply educating yourselves and speaking to the people you're comfortable with obviously armed with more knowledge from that education. It could be just posting things a little bit more on Twitter. It could be writing emails. It could be calling out people. It could, you know, it's
supporting
whatever
organizations.
Yeah, it could be through supporting organizations. Exactly. Everyone has their way, and that's great. You figure out what you're comfortable with and you go that route, and whatever direction that is, that's totally fine. You just got to identify with that and just trust it and keep going with it.
Yeah, all of you have summed it up so beautifully. And you never know the people that you can touch in your life. Even if you are, as Sharon was saying, more on the introverted side, you know, one small gesture could be the biggest gesture to somebody in your life that really needs it, that you might never know about. And part of it is just, you know, showing those small little ways to show support, to show people in the world that you have your back. It's our responsibility as people to generate and to create the awareness and to have these discussions. And much more importantly, to show the support for the people that need it the most, that feel like they don't have somebody that they can come to, and really making sure that, you know, we're serving the people the best way that we can and creating an environment that, you know, people feel like they're accepted in and can thrive in no matter who they are.
Yeah, all really good points. You know, I think you guys summed that up really, really well. And we want to thank everyone for tuning in today. We want to thank the ATP and the WTA for putting this on. It is so important for organizations, especially in sport, you know, to stand up for the community and have a voice. So, you know, on behalf of You Can Play, definitely going to say thank you to them, and just everyone out there that's watching and listening. You know, we're here. We care about you. You are seen, you are heard, and you are loved. And you know, we just always want to encourage everyone to live their lives, be themselves, live authentically, and you know, like Dylan said, love is love. You know, so go on and do great things.